given the fact that I'm reviewing a fairly obscure Japanese science fiction show from the 70s, should tell you how much free time I have on my hands. So here's my review of Spectreman. Alright, so Spectreman is a 1970s tokusatsu show from Japan, which is the Japanese term for like science fiction shows which have like giant robots and monsters and stuff like that. But I also learned a new term called Kyodai Hero, which is like a subgenre within tokusatsu, which is about like where the hero is either like an alien or a robot or whatever, who can change size, like who can become a giant to fight all the various monsters and kaiju that show up. So this falls in the category of like Kyodai Hero. Okay, so the show is from 19. It aired from 71 to 72. It has like 63 episodes total. I watched 12 of them, so I'm going to talk about those 12. So, but before that, let's just talk about the show a little bit. Okay, so the show was made by a company called P Productions, and Spectreman has the distinction of being like the first tokusatsu show to air in the 70s. So this came out in 71, and I think like Return of Ultraman was like 3 or 4 months after that. So this just sort of beat it out by 3 or 4 months. Also, like P Productions also has one more sort of feather under their cap or belt, whatever, which is that they had a show called prior to this called Ambassador Magma, which was the first color tokusatsu show to air in Japan, which beat out Ultraman by I think like a couple of weeks. So they like in both cases they were like really lucky in that sense. So a few details, I had to write it down because I'm not going to remember all like the Japanese names. Okay, so the show was created by Soji Ushio, who's also known as Tomio Sagisu. So if you watch the American version, it says like created by Tomio Sagisu. Okay, so it doesn't say Soji Ushio. It stars Tetsuo Narikawa, who plays the lead character of Spectreman, and his human name is Joji Gamo. In the American version, he's called George. Now, he was also a martial artist, so a lot of the choreography and the moves for Spectreman, sort of he helped out with that. He also had a very short career. So he was the hero in Spectreman, which lasted for like 63 episodes. And then he did like a couple more shows, like he did like one episode of Kamen Rider and another episode of like Ultraman. And then he pretty much just like retired. And he went on to sort of establish like a martial arts school. So his career is pretty much just like 4 or 5 years. Okay, the main villain is a character called Dr. Gori, who I'll describe in a while. He was voiced by Kiyoshi Kobayashi, and he was the suit acting was done by Takanobu Toya. And then finally you have the third major character, who is Karas, who is the second in command. Okay, who was like the right hand man of Dr. Gori, and he was done by Koji Uneshi. And then all the monsters were done by like all the suitmation stuff, like that was done by Haruo Nakajima, who was famous for playing Godzilla. So he did most of the kaiju stuff in Spectreman. So the show aired in Japan from like 71 to 72, and then eventually was imported to America in 78. Okay. And so in 78, it was like they got in the show, and then it was produced by Richard L. Rosenfeld, who produced the show for America. And then they kind of the voiceover and a lot of the dialogues were written by a voice actor by the name of Mel Wells. So Mel Wells is famous for doing the voice for the monster in the Little Shop of Horrors, the original one, like not the Steve Martin one. There is an original from like the 50s, so he did the voice for that. So he's famously like a voice actor. And so I couldn't find out too many details, but my guess is like he did the voice for like most of the major characters. So I think he did the voice for George and Dr. Gori and Karas. So Karas in the original version is called Ra. RAH, and then in the American version they changed it to Karas for some reason. I don't know. And then you have a bunch of other characters. I don't know how many he voiced, but he voiced like a fair few of them. He also wrote the dialogues and like made them a little more funnier, which sort of suited his sort of style and personality and all of that. And then eventually, I think so. It also aired in like Brazil. When in America, they also edited the whole thing a little bit because like there were some scenes which are a little too violent, so kind of edited that out. The All the stuff that is available online, like the show is entirely on YouTube. Like I think it's in public domain. I'm not sure. Like the YouTube channel says public domain, but I don't know about that. But yeah, the stuff available online is the English dub. It is actually surprisingly hard to find the original version. Like I did manage to find like 2 episodes of the original like Japanese version on Internet Archive. So I did watch that just to sort of compare it. So I'll talk about that, a little later, once I start talking about the show. But yeah, it is surprisingly hard to find. Like they had in America, they did like a VHS release. There has never been a DVD release of this. I don't know about Japan. I did find like like someone selling the DVDs, the Japanese DVDs of the show on Etsy. But yeah, I don't like. I mean, the show is nice, but I'm not going to like buy the DVDs for it. So, anyways, so what makes the show interesting? Not just like beyond the fact that if you're just interested in watching like Japanese tokusatsu stuff, is it is inspired by Ultraman. But the first thing that sort of stands out is that they don't have the budget to do this, which is what makes it sort of adorable and sort of hilarious to watch. Because like I didn't know about that when I started watching it, but the minute I watched it, I went like, this thing, like, because if you watch like the original Ultraman from the 60s, that looks better than this show, which is like 6-7 years prior to this. And that of course is like a lot of pedigree behind it. That is like a big studio. I think it's like Toho which was doing it, and then it was like the great Eiji Tsuburaya who actually, like, that's the first production. Like Eiji Tsuburaya created Ultraman. So, and for those of you who don't know who Eiji Tsuburaya is, he's the one who did all the stuff for Godzilla. So he's like a big name. So, and when you watch Ultraman, you can sort of see like the effort that is there, and they have the budget to do all the kaijus and all of that stuff. With this one, they really don't. Like the first, from what I read online, like the first 15 episodes had the maximum budget, and then it kind of got lesser as the show went along. But even if that was the maximum budget they had, like I wonder what's going to be there in like the later episodes, because I've only watched 12. So what they did very smartly was, instead of doing like one monster per episode, which is like a very standard thing with like Ultraman, most of the Ultraman shows, you'll get like one kaiju per episode. They knew they didn't have the budget. So instead they did like, instead of writing like a 25-minute episode, they would write like 50 minutes. And so they would break that in half. So so it's sort of like chunks of, every story lasts for 2 episodes. So every even episode, the story starts, and then every odd episode, the story ends. So it'll generally be like the even episode, the kaiju will show up, like the monster will show up, and then Spectreman will show up and fight the monster. And then, he will get defeated or he'll get injured or whatever. And then the episode will end with, will Spectreman defeat the monster, or will the monster destroy Earth? Will Dr. Gori win? Like that stuff. And then the next episode, like Spectreman will rise up again and fight the kaiju and win. So every 2 episodes you get like, it's the same formula that repeats. But in order to save money and not do like, a kaiju every episode, they kind of did this, which is smarter. The other things that sort of stand out with the show is, firstly, Dr. Gori. Like Dr. Gori is a fairly sort of, if you watch the show, Dr. Gori is going to remain in your head. Okay, because Dr. Gori is an ape. He's like an orangutan with like blonde hair and a pink suit. So there is no way you're ever going to forget Dr. Gori. Okay, so and he's also like an expert at hand acting.
Carlos has blundered again. He is a stupid fool, not worthy of my trust.
my guess is, because again I can't confirm this, but my guess is that the mask that the actor is wearing is not very articulate. Like the eyes don't move. Like there are holes, you can see his eyes, but like the eyebrows don't move, or there isn't a lot of like stuff moving. Like the lips move like a little bit. So instead, the actor just decided, like, I'm going to do this. So he does that a lot, like, I am going to take over the world. So everything is like, lots of hand movement, which is hilarious to watch. So the point is that the reason why Dr. Gori is interesting is because if you watch something like Ultraman doesn't have like a fixed villain. Like every episode, there's a new monster that shows up. There's no fixed villain. With this, you get a fixed villain. So because Dr. Gori is like, in every episode. And then Karas is in every episode, who's like his idiotic sidekick. Okay, so that really helps out. The other thing that that is very interesting is with, again, like comparing it to Ultraman, or so with most of those kinds of shows, right? Ultraman always shows up on Earth, and then on Earth there is something like the Earth Defense Force, or something like a military organization, and then they will have like like a command center and all of that stuff, and so an Ultraman will eventually sort of join up with them. With this, the creator of the show didn't want to do like a military organization, so instead you get this thing called the Pollution Research and Control Bureau, which is kind of important because pollution is like a major aspect of this show. Okay, like back in the 70s, Japan was getting like majorly industrialized, so there was like a lot of pollution everywhere. And they wanted to do a show which would sort of talk about that. Like even if, like I recently watched Godzilla versus Megalon, and even that deals with pollution. So pollution was like a pretty big topic back then. So they have like this thing called the Pollution Research and Control Bureau that eventually, that like George, Spectreman joins up, and they go around, like investigating, like, oh, there's a lot of pollution here, and then Gori will create a monster out of that pollution to like defeat Spectreman or try and take over Earth. So you don't get like that military aspect of this. This is like just a sort of like a government bureau or a government department. The third thing that's also very interesting is that Spectreman can't transform on his own.
We wish you good fortune on your mission, Spectreman. Prepare to transform.
Ready.
So that's the most interesting part. So Spectreman is sent to Earth from this place called Nebula 51 or 61 or something to like fight Dr. Gori and protect Earth.
Spectreman. Spectreman. This is Overlord.
But he's a cyborg which is controlled by Nebula 51. Okay, so whenever he has to transform, he has to take permission. So he always have to look up in the sky and go like, calling Nebula 51, I need to transform. And then sometimes they won't let him transform because they're like, no, like the fighter jets have shown up and they are taking care of this. So you don't need to transform at this moment. And they can even shut him down. Like there's an episode where he sort of rebels against them, so they shut him down. So that's pretty interesting. That's quite different from like, if you watch like Ultraman or any of like the Metal Hero stuff, like, you have things like Space Sheriff Shaidar or Space Sheriff Sharivan. They can all just transform. They have like a button and they'll just press the button, they'll transform. With Spectreman, like, that doesn't happen. So yeah, so those things kind of make it, much more sort of interesting to watch, or just like make it stand out from something like Ultraman. All right, so a little bit about like the premise of the show. Okay, it's like, and then the general setup. So it starts off with Dr. Gori, and he's from this planet E in the Gaia system, something, doesn't matter. Anyway, so planet E is like, super intelligent monkeys, okay, and Dr. Gori is like a lead scientist over there. And then one day they go like, oh, you're a smart guy, why don't you become our leader? And so he becomes a leader. And then immediately he goes like, oh, we're going to use all of our peaceful technology to start making weapons and like take over the galaxy or whatever. And they go like, oh shit, this guy is insane.
He began to design and manufacture deadly weapons with which he could overthrow the central government of his planet and then extend the domination of his kind to other worlds in the universe.
So because they don't like exile people or death sentence or whatever like that, they just go like, we brainwash people. So we just take out all the bad stuff from your brain and make you a nice person. So while he's being sent off to get brainwashed, the military officer who's taking him, I don't know why they have a military officer if they're peaceful, but anyways, the military officer who's taking him is Karas, and he goes like, I like the way you think. I'm going to rescue you. So they both get on a spaceship and they just run away from the planet.
They left their solar system in a flying saucer. Dr. Gori and Karas wandered aimlessly through space for many years.
And then a few years of wandering around in space, they end up on Earth. And Dr. Gori is like, oh, look at this primitive planet. They're destroying their planet using pollution. I am going to take over and make it better. But in order to do that, I'm going to use the pollution to make monsters, and like take over the planet. Anyway, so that's how Dr. Gori ends up on Earth. And at the same time, like somehow the Space Force in Nebula 51 find out about this, and they send Spectreman, like, Spectreman, go fight Dr. Gori and protect Earth from Dr. Gori.
This is the head of a cyborg that is a highly developed robot. It is under the control of Nebula 71, an artificial planet which moves at will through the universe. The robot is known as Spectreman on Earth.
So that's like the general, like backdrop or the background of the show. And then once like Spectreman shows up on Earth, he immediately joins up this thing called the Pollution Research and Control Bureau. And so every episode then is just a very simple setup. Like Dr. Gori will find some area, create a monster, and then the Pollution Control Bureau will find out about it. They'll go there with George tagging along. And George will do the Superman thing where he'll get, scared and run away or, hide or whatever. And then Spectreman will show up and then fight the monster. And they go like, George, where were you? Spectreman had shown up. It's like, oh, shucks, I missed him again. Like stuff like that. So that is like every episode, the way it happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll just talk a little bit about like the things I liked from the first 12 episodes that I watched. And then I'll talk a little bit about the difference between like the original Japanese version and the American version. Okay, so I kind of, wrote things down because I wasn't going to remember all of it. So the most hilarious part of the first episode is George showing up and getting a job at the Pollution Control Bureau, which is, he just shows up and like enters the office and goes, hey, I'm working here from now on. And he just picks one desk and like removes all the stuff from there. So this is where I'm going to sit. And then he just sits there and he goes like, from now on I work here. And you're like, what?
Now hold on.
What's this all about, fella?
The name's George.
So what?
From now on, I'm going to be working here. And this is where I'll sit.
Hold on, that's my desk.
Let's say it was your desk.
Like, this is not, like, you don't get a job like this. And everyone in the office is of the same opinion. You go like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? He's like, no. And then he immediately gets up and he goes like, come on, we all have to go. Like, something bad is going to happen. Like, this guy is like lost his mind. But they still sort of go with him. And that's also like the first scene, like the one that happens in the office, is where I realized like they don't have the budget. Because when you see their office, it's this really sort of cramped, tiny little space. Okay, so which has like 2 or 3 desks, and like you can kind of make out like it's really tiny. Like there's another episode where there's like a doctor who is talking about like brain surgery or whatever, and you kind of feel like it's probably the same room. They just remove the desks and put in like a few medical posters or something, like of a brain and some x-rays and the doctor, like, because it's always like the same corner, so you kind of make out pretty much from the get-go like they don't really have like the budget. But the first episode beyond that is not that great, or particularly interesting, because the first monster that shows up is like very okay. Like it's like this thing with a lot of tentacles on its head, but again, because they don't have the budget, it's not very well sort of articulated or whatever. You do get like this hilarious action scene where Spectreman shows up and they just keep spinning around. Like, so the kaiju is spinning here and the Spectreman is spinning there. And they just go spin for like 30 seconds, and you're like, what is going on? But yeah, like, anyways, the first 2 episodes not particularly great, but you do get to meet Dr. Gori, and he's not hand acting that much in the first episode, but it gets better as the show moves along. So episode 3 is fun because it's the only time in the entire sort of show, like 3 and 4, is where this dinosaur type kaiju shows up, and they actually do like stop motion. So it's kind of fun to watch that because you have him like sort of like, you know, walking along, and then you also get like a tiny little Spectreman, and there's this shot where it picks up Spectreman in its teeth and goes like this. And it's like, it's really sort of fun to watch that because it's so cute to see like this tiny little stop motion creature, and like, you know, Spectreman is like this little doll that he picks up in his head and moves around and throws it away. It's also the episode where I think Karas meets the girl. Like there's always like one girl or one woman that will be in this agency. She's not the romantic interest, but yeah, you have to have like a token female in there. And Karas immediately is like, oh, you know, I like that woman. So he immediately kidnaps her. And then Spectreman has to sort of go and rescue her as well. So yeah, so that's like the fun part in like episode 3. Episode 4 is again, you know, fun because Karas goes out into the world. Like Dr. Gori gives him some order, like go do something or whatever. So Karas goes out into the world, which is hilarious to watch because he is a gorilla. Like Karas is like a giant gorilla. So all he does is like he wears like this big hat, like a basket weave like hat, and a poncho, and he's just walking down the street. And there's actually a dialogue.
These stupid humans don't suspect who I am, so I can go anywhere.
And no one recognizes him, which is even better. So you just have him sort of walking around the street and monologuing, and just like in a poncho. So you're like this gorilla in a poncho just walking around. It's a lot of fun to watch. Okay, episode 5 is where Dr. Gori finally gets tired of Karas because he's an idiot, and he makes like a duplicate Karas, and then Karas gets like really jealous.
Well, Karas, what do you think of your new colleague? Magnificent, isn't he? Yes. And I think we'll call him Ka.
Doctor, you can't do this to me. I am of the planet E. I'm not a stupid Earth creature like that. Silence!
And which again leads to this very fun thing, which I think is like a great idea, is that Karas shows up, becomes a giant, and he like starts destroying the city. And then these fighter jets show up, and he fights off the fighter jets. And then he's waiting for Spectreman to show up, who is not showing up. So he's sitting, so the shot you get is brilliant because he's sitting on top of a building, and then he just sort of, like it's nighttime, and he's just waiting there. And it's daytime, and he's still just sitting there going like, where is Spectreman?
Spectreman, where are you? How many buildings do I have to push over before I find you?
And then like Spectreman shows up sometime in the afternoon to fight him. So it's this beautiful scene of just this monster sitting on top of a building getting bored because the hero is not showing up to fight him. Okay, then because he gets beaten up, like episode 6, his hand is in a sling or whatever. And then that's also the episode where Spectreman sort of rebels against Nebula 51 because they're like, these people have been infected by pollution and they're going to infect everyone. So the order is like, kill those people. And Spectreman is like, no, I won't kill them. So they shut down Spectreman and throw him off into space.
It's too late for you, Spectreman. You have disobeyed us for the last time. Your punishment has been decided. You will be transported to the planet 7 in Pegasus and remain there in exile for eternity.
And Dr. Gory's like, this is my opportunity. So he sends Karas and duplicate Karas, off into space to sort of, destroy Spectreman. So Spectreman is like suspended, like he's not alive. He's just like shut off. So they kind of try to beat him up, they can't beat him up. Eventually he falls on an alien planet where you get like this slow motion battle between like two giant gorillas and Spectreman, who eventually wakes up because they're like, okay, I think we still have use for you. We're going to, wake you up, fight off these two monkeys, and then you can, go back to Earth and, save them, save Earth again. So you get like this nice little fight on an alien planet. And that's where like the duplicate Karas gets killed. So now, original Karas is happy because, hey, I'm back to being number one again, or number two. Okay, so then Spectreman takes off and Karas runs away, and things are back to like status quo. Yeah, episode 7 is okay. You get like a cockroach monster. Yeah. So yeah, that was different enough.
There's light. There's light.
Episode 8, again, like the cockroach monster continues. And again, like Karas has got the hots for the lady. So he keeps kidnapping, the lady that works at the Pollution Control Bureau. And so Spectreman beats up Karas again.
Now we shall settle this.
And then he goes to fight the giant cockroach monster in front of Mount Fuji, and it sort of turns into like a bullfight for a minute. Episode 9, this two-headed rat shows up. Okay, like this giant two-headed rat. It is fun to see that because you kind of realize that probably the guy inside the suit can't see anything, because you have like these two heads which are just sort of articulating a little bit. There's also like you get a shot where you can see like a rope sort of pulling up the tail, like animating the tail. Yeah, the rat is interesting because you get a part where Spectreman like uses his blades and cuts off the rat's head. So that's where like episode 9 ends, where Spectreman is like really injured and tired. He gets beaten up, but he's sort of chopped off his head, so he thinks he's won, but then the heads grow back again.
Let's go more heads.
And then he's like, oh shit, what do I do now? But he doesn't have any energy left. So episode 10, he has to sort of fight the monster again. But what has happened is that he has transformed back into being George. And he's like, his teammates find him. They don't know he's Spectreman. So they put him in a car. And he's like, no, let me go. I have to go fight the monster. And they're like, he's lost his mind. So they get him to a hospital and they tie him to the bed. So he's got to now figure out a way to get out of bed and then go fight the monster.
Hey, let me go. Untie me. Untie me.
You need a good rest, and you're going to get it whether you like it or not.
No, don't go. Untie me.
And it gets fun because it also gets dangerous, because there is a part where he's fighting the monster and there's supposed to be like this power station. So he throws the two-headed rat at the power station and his suit actually catches fire. Like the rat suit, like at the back, actually catches fire. So you see the actor who's playing Spectreman, because I don't think it's the main actor, it's somebody else in the suit. He sort of keeps fighting and then goes behind him and puts out the fire. So episode 11 and 12 is the reason why I found out about this show. Because I had, somebody had put up like this clip of, it was called the Depressed Kaiju. Okay, and I was like, this is hilarious. I should find out what this show is. And that was the show. So that's this episode. So what happens is like, Karas is out in the world doing something, and when he's out in the world, he's not wearing the poncho as usual, but he wears like this leather coat and a hat, and so no one recognizes him. And so this truck goes by and like splashes him with like mud or whatever. He gets really pissed off, so he captures the driver, and then he like takes him to Dr. Gori's lab. Dr. Gori is not there, so he just sort of does something on him, and he turns into like this monster, and like this garbage eating monster. And so the more garbage he eats, the bigger he gets. But you get this really phenomenal acting where he's like, he's like really depressed. He just wants to get back to his wife and child.
What happened to me? Yeah. Oh. Oh, food. Food.
And he's like, don't kill me, I am human. It's like brilliant.
No, stop. Listen to me. I'm a human being.
Right, he jumps into the lake and he dies. And in episode 12, they find like one body part, but then he regrows from that body part. Like his hand regrows his full body, which is phenomenal. Right, and then like Spectreman shows up to fight him, and he's like, don't fight me or whatever. And you get this hilarious shot where he's at a construction site behind like this giant pile of sand, and it's like a low-level camera angle. So you have like the monster over there, and the Spectreman hasn't turned giant as yet. So it's this wonderful thing where the actor in the suit is the real person, and there's like a low-level camera angle from Spectreman's point of view. But Spectreman is this tiny little stick figure. Yeah, so again, as I said, like they don't have the budget. Like even when you see like Dr. Gori's spaceship, it's very small. Like it's this really tiny little set.
Wrong and stupid. Excellent for your purposes. A perfect choice, wouldn't you say so, sir?
I commend you, Karas. Take him to the lab at once.
Which, if you compare it to something like Forbidden Planet and you see the spaceship, it's like huge. Of course, there's no point comparing it. But yeah, even from like an Ultraman point of view, right? Ultraman, the sets are big and like the military outfit is big. Here, everything is like very tiny, little rooms and stuff like that. So yeah, so most of the episodes are generally fun. They're not great. Again, don't go into this expecting, like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. But it is fun to watch. And for the time that they made it, for the budget that they made it, it is pretty impressive. Okay, so before I close this, I did find, like, as I said, like I found like 2 episodes of the original show. And so I got the chance to compare them. Okay, so the first big difference is, of course, the opening song. Okay, so there are like 2 completely different songs. Also, the original version, in the song, you get the names of all the actors. In this one, you don't. They name the original creator, but beyond that, they name the American editor and they name Mel Wells and the producer, but none of the Japanese actors get mentioned. So the original, they mention like the Japanese actors. The other big difference is you can make out the edits, and you can also make out like there was a lot more violence in the original version. So in episode 48, like this monster attacks Spectreman, like grabs him, and then Spectreman takes out his blades, and like chops his hands off, and then the monster sort of collapses on a building and dies. In the American version, he grabs Spectreman and then just edits to him crashing into a building and dying. You don't get the cuts. You don't get him like chopping his arms off. So yeah, so you get like, so those are, I'm going to see if I can find more. I think it's going to be very difficult. Like if I haven't found it as yet, I doubt I'm going to find like the original version anywhere. But yeah, at least those 2, you kind of realize, yeah, there were like a fair few differences between the original and like the American version. But yeah, if you want to watch it, it's fun. It's all on YouTube, like all 63 episodes. The English version is there. So yeah, like I don't know, like if you have kids, it would be fun to see how kids react to a 1970s, Japanese kid show. It would be fun to watch. Anyway, so if I watch like more, I will watch like 10, 15 more and then come back and sort of review those just to see like how the show progresses.